Thank you, Judge. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you again. Thank y'all for being here. It's an important day. It's going to be an important week as you all sit in judgment and you evaluate the evidence in this case. And as we talked about in voir dire, Mr. Johnson sits before you innocent. And he'll remain that way. Because at the conclusion of this case, once you've viewed all the evidence and heard all the testimony, you will not be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that he did this. Because he didn't. Now, Mr. Haggard was a very skilled attorney, did a great opening statement. But there's always two sides. And there are certain things about this case that I'm going to urge you to be paying particular attention to. You heard a little bit about Govan, and I anticipate you'll get to hear from Govan in this case. You already heard you're going to be hearing from Mr. Smith. You know, and Mr. Hagerman talked about Mr. Govan and said he liked to, you know, get an interest in young rappers, right? He liked to exploit. He liked to exploit young rappers. Like Mr. Johnson. He brings no skill to the table, but you're going to hear testimony about how he intended. It was his sole mission to get a 30 to 60% piece of Mr. Johnson. You're going to hear him say, oh man, Mr. Johnson was going to go platinum. And he and his god brother had missed out on this golden opportunity for another rapper, and they weren't going to let that go by. They weren't going to let that go by again. And so he gets his claws into Mr. Johnson. All right? And what you're going to hear is, as the process goes on, is the idea is that he's going to sign with CMG. Mr. Johnson is. But there comes a point in the road where what Mr. Govan wants, which is a meal ticket, the payday, and what Mr. Johnson wants, differ. And you're going to hear about how they take this trip to Atlanta. And the whole idea is that they're going to go to Atlanta, and this is Mr. Govan's chance. He's got another guy he's going to bring in to help sell the management contract, which is going to give him this massive piece of this young up-and-coming artist. And you're going to hear, this is about September of 21. This is right before November. And you're going to hear that they go to Atlanta to meet Jook, who is one of the higher-ups at CMG. Right? They go to Atlanta, and while in Atlanta, Mr. Johnson decides, I'm not going to go your way. I'm not going to go your way, Govan. I'm not going into business with you. I'm going to do it without you. And at that moment, I anticipate you're going to hear Mr. Govan say he was really mad. He felt some kind of way about the fact that he had, in his mind, his perception was he had done all this to help this up-and-coming star, and now he was going to be left to the wayside, and he wasn't going to get a piece. And he's so angry that he leaves Mr. Johnson in Atlanta. Leaves him there. Mr. Johnson has to find another way home. You know, Mr. Hagerman talked about, you know, it's not 1981, right? It's 2024 now. It's 21 when this happened. But there are certain things They're as old as time. And that's greed, right? Pride, and deceit. And that's what Mr. Govan has, is greed. And then he gets angry because if he can't get a piece of this young artist, nobody can. Nobody can. It's time to tank this one because he's not going to go with it. And Govan, you're going to hear, and the state has said, is soliciting. He's in the middle of this thing with Dolph. It's going to be important for you through this case to really pay attention to credibility. When you hear witnesses like Govan testify, why is he saying what he's saying? What's he getting at? He's getting something, and you're going to hear it. He's got a vested interest in making sure that he saves his own hide and takes this young rapper, this young man, off the board, since he wasn't going to go with him in the first place, since he abandoned him and decided not to share any of his money going forward. The same is to be said for Mr. Smith. You're going to hear from Mr. Smith. And Mr. Hagerman tells you, he says he's going to tell you that was me and Justin. You will also hear about other things Mr. Smith has said during the same time that he's been meeting with the state, meeting with law enforcement, trying to save himself. And why he's doing this, why he's meeting with them and telling them this story, you're also going to hear he's writing letters to his family and telling his family, I didn't really do this. I didn't really do this. I'm just going to get the deal. I just want the deal. I want you to know I didn't do it. I'm just saying what I got to say to get myself home. How much bigger of a motivator could someone have? And it makes you question. If he's saying those things to other people, how do you know the truth? How does the state know the truth before they put him up, right? You know, you're right, 2021, there's video. And I'm going to tell you now, similar clothing doesn't equal the same. All right? Video is going to show what it shows. You're going to be able to watch it, evaluate it, look at it. The crosstown videos and pictures that they show you. Look at them, evaluate them. Absolutely. But similar doesn't mean the same. For mass-produced items, you have to ask yourself, is there anything particularly significant or unique about those items that couldn't have been obtained by another person and worn by another person? And look, if that video on its own and the other part of that was enough, why would we need to hear from these other folks? Why would we need to hear from them? They want you to hear from them. They need you to hear from them because there was references of cell phone information. That cell phone information isn't going to be able to pinpoint where they are or where these phones are. That area has all sorts of other locations in it. You're going to hear You heard that car was wiped. You're going to hear that they did fingerprint analysis on the car. Cornelia Smith's prints are on the car. Another individual named Kristen Gardner on the car. Another gentleman named Trayon Ingram on the car. You know whose fingerprints aren't on the car? Justin Johnson. And if it was wiped and then moved and wiped, as the state suggests, then how are their prints on it? You're going to hear that they did touch DNA, right? So lucky, it's not 1981 anymore. We got touch DNA now. Forensics has come a long way. Crime scene unit went into this car and did several swipes for touch DNA. They don't have anything saying Justin Johnson's DNA. The car that they got, a dude got shot, according to Cornelia Smith. I mean, he got shot in the shoulder. No blood in the car that we're going to hear any forensic analysis about. How is that? These are the things that you as jurors will have to pay particular attention to throughout this case. The shame of it is that people like Govan and Cornelia Smith are going to get an opportunity to come and lie to your face. That's the shame. And they will. The judge instructed you earlier some of the things to be mindful of among credibility. So they appeared particularly honest. And then there becomes one really important. To what degree does what Cornelius is saying differ from what Govan is saying? Pay attention to that. Why is it different? The truth is one thing, right? One thing. And I'm not talking about inconsequential facts. I'm talking about this was a horrible thing that happened to Adolph Thornton and his family. It wasn't just every day. So, why are they telling different stories? So, we talked about this in Board Iverson, the idea of keeping an open mind. I'm going to ask you again to do that. To hold any judgment or consideration on that issue until you've heard everything. And remember, I completely agree. This isn't business this week. This is justice. And as we talked about in Board Ire, your job is to mete out justice in this case. Absolutely. A life was lost. Absolutely. But as we talked about in Board Ire, and you all agreed, it's never justice if you convict the wrong person. So I appreciate all of your attention that you're going to provide this week in deciding the fate of Mr. Johnson. Because he didn't kill Adolph Thornton.